Well, I felt that I needed to forgive her in order so that I could heal and move on with my life and get over my intimidation of her. And I felt that it was a stumbling block that was holding me back. So she was still kind of vicious. As a matter of fact, I wasn't even speaking to her when I started my show in 2006. So then she saw her friends started to tell her they saw me on TV. And she then found me and said she wanted to be on the show. And, you know, I kind of didn't want to do it, but then I felt that, well, this is something that I need to conquer within myself so that I can move on with my life. So I let her come on the show, and I said the things to her and in front of her that I always wanted her to teach me and say to me that she would never say. And it was a way, too, it's just like putting it in her face to say, look, you deliberately blinded me. You deliberately abused me and hurt me, and you set me up to be used and abused by the world. So it's just like putting it in her face and making her deal with what she had forced me to deal with, a lot of abuse and pain.
Well, I got to tell you, she's a real trooper on those videos. And, you know, people, first of all, there's no real context in a lot of ways for when people see those videos. I mean, they know who you are, but they don't know who she is. And because I've shared those videos with a number of people, and, you know, they don't know, you know, that that's your mom. And when I tell them that that's your mom, I mean, their jaws kind of drop. And the amazing thing about those videos is that her timing is like impeccable. I mean, she's like the best straight man, you know, that you could have ever asked for. I mean, if you're Johnny Carson, she's Ed McMahon. I mean, this is really kind of entertaining and compelling video. And the fact that people don't know that, and the fact that people don't understand your past with her, just adds a whole nother layer to this, which is just absolutely fascinating. What kind of terms are you on with her now?
Well, I speak to her when she speaks to me. So, you know, that's basically how it is. You know, if she doesn't want to speak to me, then she is unavailable. So I've just learned to deal with her on her terms and not expect her to be what I always felt like I needed her to be, because I feel like what she is what I needed her to be for me.
So did doing those shows with her make you closer to her in any way, shape, or form? And did she understand more about you when you did that stuff?
No, because it takes two people to make a relationship. So when a mother can turn her back on you from birth and be in and out of your life, she doesn't really have a serious attachment to you anyway, not in a positive way, and then abuse you all your life, then no. She already made up her mind the way she wants to be. That's what a lot of people have a problem understanding, and they let their mothers abuse them. Because if that's her history, what makes you think she's going to change?
That's amazing stuff. I mean, even after all those videos and all that work, you still have a wall of separation between you and your mom. Fascinating. Can we talk a little bit about the role of the black woman in the family? I managed an apartment building in Oakland, East Oakland, for about 4 years, and you know, it was really tough. But it's an experience I would never change. You know, it's like I saw a lot of stuff there, and you know, if I had to do it all over again, I would do it. I may do it a little differently, but I'd do it. But one of the things that I saw was obviously sort of the you know, the headline material. You know, black mother raising children, generally with multiple fathers, and then of course playing, you know, sort of the AFDC card and getting money and it didn't bother me if they got AFDC, as long as they tried to better themselves and get a job and, you know, go to school or whatever. Well, it wasn't a big deal for me. I wasn't like a hardcore right winger, because everybody needs a little help in our society. But they didn't always do that. But what I did see was I saw at a very fundamental level the fragmentation of the family, especially when there was a young male and a young woman that were being raised by a single mom. And it was a very intense experience, and I could see how the identities of young men and young women were forged in that environment, and it was painful to watch. And I'd like to know if you have anything to say about that, and how, in your mind, we can go about healing that rift, not just in the black community, but in the community of men and women of all races and colors.
I mean, well, I think that's everywhere, not just in California, and to me, I always say that, and people want to attack me when I say that it goes back to the psychology of slavery. It's a slave mentality.
Yeah.
And when you go back to us not knowing who we are and not knowing our history, and even a lot of us not wanting to come to terms, there was a book written called The Sybil, where it talks about there's a high priestess that has actually studied the history of Africa before European colonization, and actually has found evidence that it was not just whites coming in to enslave my ancestors, but it was a female-dominated society, and the black males were very resentful and angry because it was a female-dominated society where the women ruled everything, and they are the ones that sold out and brought down the civilization in Kemet, or what is called Egypt. That's in Africa, where people want to separate Egypt from Africa, but it is not.
That's right.
So we don't want to deal with the fact that our ancestors, are responsible. It's their sins that have caused us to suffer then and even to suffer now. Yes, we have a lot of issues outside of our community that affect our community. I mean, we basically have no power. We don't control our own neighborhoods. We don't control our economy. We don't own any real estate. So without land, you have no power. And many of our people, unfortunately, are so wrapped into consumerism, being slaves to labels and what's the hottest record and the hottest dance and the hottest shoe and outfit, and the other issues I see is abortion as well. We have no value, no respect for our body, so abortion is the new birth control. When I know, and a lot of people know, that Margaret Sanger, that created Planned Parenthood, is one of the eugenicists who loves the fact that so many black people, the statistics say, I don't know if it's true, that more black people die through abortion than black-on-black crime now. So they're loving it when all these black women go use abortion as birth control, and then it is a biological product. The aborted fetus is a biological product that makes a lot of people a lot of money. It's not just destroyed biological tissue. Once it is detached from the black woman's womb, having black men in prison, that's one of the issues. Having black men, because they don't know who they are, know that they respect their woman or their own sperm and the offspring that they create, and walking away from that has created a problem. I think unemployment in our community, or minimum wage employment, is an issue. So there are so many things to me, and black women not respecting themselves and sleeping with anybody and not using birth control and having babies by these different men. It's so, you see what I'm saying? There's so many things.
Yeah.
That
You know what's really interesting? I mean, you kind of glossed over just a little bit, but you were hinting at something, which was the collection of genetic material through abortion. And then you kind of went on to something else. And, when you were mentioning that, just as you were approaching that, I wrapped my head around that, and I thought, you know what? I never really thought about that from that angle. I mean, where does the genetic material go, and what do they do with it? And you're right. I mean, Margaret Sanger is a complete eugenicist and a complete racist. There are quotes all over the internet that talk about, having less, black people on the planet. It's out there. It's not the hidden history of Planned Parenthood, but it's part of it. I mean, it is the hidden history of Planned Parenthood, but it's out there. I mean, you can see that. And but what were you where were you going with the hidden genetic material? That's fascinating.
Well, I mean, I was just, not trying to go too deep with that, because I don't know, what you or your audience knows or thinks about that. But, yeah, they do stem cell research with the cells from aborted fetuses, because they're very, they're fresh, and they're very good at helping to regenerate spinal cord tissue.
Right.
So when people had accidents or they've been paralyzed, they just have outlawed it in the United States. I mean, but that still doesn't mean it's not being used, and they create other products out of it. And a lot of those parts, just like when people die and they take people's organs, even though you check no, you don't want to be an organ donor on your driver's license, or when people die in the hospital and they don't tell the family that they remove a lot of things, or they will remove them from somebody that's on life support. Many times if they know the person has good organs, they're not going to just hold the person on life support. They're going to go take the organs. I know some circumstance personally happened in my family, and it's happened to a lot of people, especially people of color. I understand where people want to sell their organs and willingly go into the knife and get pieces taken out because they need money. But there are a lot of people, and even when you look at slavery in the United States, there are a lot of white women that benefited from white slave owners that were doing brain surgery, cutting it with black men awake and no anesthesia on these plantations,
right.
Cutting a black woman's vagina open, opening her up, taking parts out of her with no anesthesia, tying them down, experimenting with their bodies, and then using what they learned to benefit white women. And there's a book called, I think, Medical Apartheid that talks about this. So it's not uncommon for them to take a black person's organs in the hospital and nobody can do anything about it, or when they find out it's basically too late. And like I said, in my family there have been some people that happened to, and then lawsuits around that because of what they did to them and did not ask them. And many of our people have suffered that way, and a lot of medical advances have been made because of what people have done to our ancestors that were enslaved, and it still goes on. And it doesn't, I don't know if you remember a few years ago, I think it was in New York, one of those cities there, where there was a man, I think he worked for a biomedical company, something where they had parts, all types of organs they sell, and joints and cornea. He had made a deal with a mortician to go in, and when people died, the mortician was letting him have organs out of the dead bodies and then take them and sell them, got very wealthy off of those body parts. And some kind of way someone told or found out about it, and they were doing autopsies, or they were doing like scans. I don't know if it's an MRI scan, basically x-rays of the bodies, and seeing that where the bones are supposed to be in the legs, it was like UV pipe.
Wow.
Because he had been taking them and selling them to this man that worked for this company that dealt with all of these human parts and tissue and joints and cornea. And then come to find out, when they found the people that had received the parts, a lot of those people were sick because they had HIV and hepatitis. That's
right.
what some of those corpses had suffered from, but they didn't care. I mean, he was just getting the money and giving the undertaker the money for the parts and then selling them for thousands of dollars. So this is stuff that, unfortunately, us in the public don't know about, and we're given information so fast that we don't have a chance to hear and to read everything.
That's right. Yeah, we're barraged by a machine gun, or an array of machine guns of information, and then when we get the information, we rarely have time to digest the information, and when we're hit with more information, and things just go down the memory hole very quickly, and we're being peppered with the next round of stimulation and distraction on a constant basis. So I would totally agree with you. For a while, I guess it was a couple of months ago, so I was dating a young woman who was mixed, and I started to look at sort of the history of slavery, and I wanted to understand part of where she came from and what her experience was about. And there were two things that really popped out for me. One was that the slave trade actually came out of Providence, Rhode Island, and the main guy behind the slave trade was a man named Aaron Lopez, and he had actually been visited by George Washington. And Aaron Lopez and a couple of other guys from Spain were kicked out of New York by Peter Stuyvesant.